Mark here from Mark's Reviews and Tutorials, who also happens to be Mark from Nillumbik Pool and Spa Service. Now, I want to talk to you today about pumps and why you should not be buying your pumps based on their horsepower rating. Okay, pumps and why it's no longer relevant to buy them based on their horsepower rating. For years, it's been like, oh, I've got to have a 1 horsepower, 3/4 horsepower, and all the brands were sort of pumping out similar water flows. But when you buy a pump, this is for a swimming pool particularly, when you buy a pump from a swimming pool, you've actually got to match a few things. You've got the turnover rate inside your swimming pool of how much water you want to turn over. But more importantly, when it comes to buying a pump, you actually need to match it to your filter. Because if you've got a, sorry I'm in my office, but the paper shredder over there, let's say that's your sand filter. If you put too big a pump on, it actually shoves the water through the filter so hard that it doesn't filter properly. It pushes the dirt particles down, or worse, inside a sand filter. I've got a video up here, what's inside a sand filter. Have a look at that to understand the workings of it. But if you've got a too big a pump, it can actually tip your sand over. There's laterals down the bottom, and the water can just basically go through without being filtered because it tips the sand over in order to get a flow going. So you've got to match the pump to the filter so the right amount of water goes through in filtering. And also important, when you backwash the sand filter, it reverses the flow, puts it out through the laterals, lifts it all and washes all the sand. Again, too big a pump, it's going to pump your sand out and down the drain because there's too much water flow going through. So when you're buying a pump, more important than the horsepower rating, the horsepower rating is how much power it uses, is the litres per minute or gallons per minute if you're in the States. What's the actual flow of the pump? That's actually more important. Now, we've had some innovations in pump designs and this has actually changed. Have a look here. I just quickly scribbled up a little chart for you. I've been in the pool industry for many years, probably 30 years now, probably even longer. Whoops. Anyway, traditionally, I remember some old Davy pumps. There was a 120, a 200 and a 300. They were 3/4 horsepower and that was 120 litres a minute is roughly what it was pumping out. Now, litres per minute, I'll talk about 8 metres head. That's basically the pressure, again with our little sand filter model. If there's restriction, then obviously not as much water goes through, and that's called head. You picture like a 40 mil pipe going straight up vertically, and 1 metre of head is how much water is going to pop out with 1 metre of pipe, and then 2 metres of pipe, 3 metres of pipe, up and so forth. So obviously as you go higher, the pump has to pump the water higher, so there's less water coming out. So how much restriction and backflow. So that's got to do with how far your pump and filter is away from your pool. If you're doing a solar installation, how high the water has to be pushed up to get onto the solar, that sort of thing. But most of you are just going to buy this for a swimming pool. It's about matching it to the filter and making sure there's enough turnover so that all of your water gets turned over in 6 to 8 hours. If you're buying it for a spa, again, it's still about flow. Because again, traditionally, when we were running these pumps, it used to be 1/4 horsepower for jets. So you had 4 jets in your spa, you ran a 1 horsepower. If you had 6 jets in your spa, you ran a 1.5. That's all changed. We're now talking, two horsepower pumps in a jet and lots of little whatever. It doesn't matter. The point I'm making here is that things have changed. Hayward. I sell Hayward pumps unashamedly. They're not sponsoring me for this video, which they would, but they don't. I've never asked, let's face it. They make really good pumps. I sell them. I will put links, if you're in Australia or New Zealand, I'll put links where I sell these for a really good price, and you can have a look at them there. Also in the States, I'll put links. I'll find the motors that I'm talking about, the pumps and motors I'm talking about, and put links there so you can have a look at exactly the ones I'm talking about. Now, Hayward has just put out what they're calling their eco pumps. I've been selling these Super 2s, really good quality pumps. I'll put a link up here. I've got a comparison video between the Super 2 and their cheaper PowerFlo 2. PowerFlo 2 is great for solars, great for above ground pools, and when you're on in-ground pools, the Super 2 is the way to go. Also, if you're, just short term in a house, don't want to spend too much money, you can use the smaller PowerFlo. But if you're going to be in the house the next 7 to 10 years, I would personally always recommend to go for the better pump. They are more expensive, 50, 60% more expensive, but they're also better made. Now, Hayward have just released what they're calling the Super 2 Eco. Eco being power saving. Now, I've also got another video, have a look up here, and that's all about the variable speed motors. Why I hate them? I don't actually like them. They are very expensive, and I know what they're getting at, but I don't think they're the best way to save money. These guys here, single speed motor, I think they are the best way to save money. Come back to my chart here, you'll find out what I'm on about. 3/4 horsepower, years ago, 120 litres per minute would come out of a 3/4 horsepower. This is your power consumption, how much electricity you're using. 550 watts, 120 litres a minute. But these eco pumps, much better pump design, much better motor design, 3/4 horsepower or 550 watts approximately, you're now getting 230 litres. That's an extra 110, so it's double the flow coming out. So what used to be a 1 horsepower, you're now getting the same flow or more out of a 3/4 horsepower. This here is the flow for this new Hayward Eco pump. So again, 1 horsepower, it used to be 200. Now the Eco is pumping out 320 litres a minute. 1.5 used to be 300. So there you go. The power consumption, wouldn't be buying one of those variable speed pumps. I'll be just buying one of these single speed pumps. Have a look at that variable speed pump video that I'll put up. I'll talk about why it does with endless edge swimming pools, fountains, auto cleaners, backwashing, blah, blah, blah. I'll go through it all in the other video. So again, 1.5 horsepower, 430 pumps. This is also available in a 2 horsepower, which is putting out 530 litres a minute. So because it's so important to match the flow into a filter, if you've got yourself a 20-year-old pump that's pumping 200 litres a minute, you go and put a 1 horsepower on, there's a chance you're actually going to damage your filter because there's too much water getting pushed there because of the efficiency of these new pumps. So in the situation, if you've got, a very old 10, 15, 20-year-old filter, let's say a 24-inch sand filter that's got a 1 horsepower pump, you buy one of these eco pumps, you actually need to buy a 3/4, which is awesome. The 3/4 costs less money, and the 3/4 is using only 3/4 of the power. So you've got yourself a true power saving in that. So it has become irrelevant to size our pumps by horsepower. Now, sizing the pumps needs to be done with flow rates and litres per minute. If you're after an average, find out what they do at 8 metres ahead and work out what flow rate you're getting from there. Have a look at the label of your sand filter or your cartridge filter. It'll talk about what it's happy, what litres per minute it wants. But it's time to get rid of talking in horsepower and start to talk in flow. How many litres a minute? Because that's going to talk about the turnover of your swimming pool, because you want to be able to turn over all of the water in your swimming pool in 6 to 8 hours. And we also got to match it to the sand filter. So if you're looking at my pumps I've got online, that's what you need to take in contact. It is not a matter of, I've got an old 24-inch, I'm not really happy with the flow, so whack a 2 horsepower pump on it. That's not going to give you better filtration. It'll probably damage your filter, and it will just push the water through the sand or through the old cartridge so hard that it won't actually filter correctly. So flow is what matters, and that's what you've got to match. If you've got an old system and you want to really up it, you may need to replace your filter and your pump in order to get that right. So look, if you've got questions, stick them in the comments below, and when I get a few questions down there, I'll make another video answering all those questions. So if you want to talk pumps, filters, flow, litres per minute, that sort of stuff, here's the place. Put your questions down below, and then I'll answer them in a video and put a link to the video down in the questions so people over time can look at that video from there. So have a look. As I said, I will put the link to these new eco pumps. Hayward's no longer selling the standard ones, the standard Super 2 here in Australia. They're all switching over to the eco, which is brilliant, but they're so efficient that the litres per minute are now so far off what they used to be. We've got to be careful. Standard 1 horsepower 24-inch on most above ground pools, very common. We pull off a 200 litre per minute old pump. We go and stick on a 320. It's not a good pump to put on there anymore. It's too much water. You need to be pumping here. You can see you get an extra 30 litres per minute. Give yourself a power saving, a cost saving, and get yourself the pump which is matched in flow, not matched in electricity consumption. There you go. Thanks for watching this Mark's Reviews and Tutorials video, Pools Demystified. And yeah, this is Mark from Nillumbik Pool and Spa Service, so it's all a little bit too much, isn't it? But hope it helps. As I said, stick your questions down and I'll make a video. But just questions to do with the flows, litres per minute and that sort of stuff, and I'll make a video answering those questions.